Today I'm bringing you a great all-around set of tips and tricks for Runescape Dragonwilds. Starting off with my first tip, and I would definitely recommend building your main large area base in the first starting area, which is called the Temple Woods. Now those of you who have played the game for a little while know that raids are super annoying to deal with, and raid levels are actually determined by the area tier that you're in and not what tier your character is. So that would mean if you're in Temple Woods, a raid would only consist of around 5 level 1 goblins attacking your base at max. Now that's a stark difference for those of you that maybe have built in the Fractured Plains, the Storm-Touched Highlands, or the Blood Blight Swamp. Now additionally to building in the Temple Woods, while you do get the lower level goblins, you also get the added benefit that the dragon doesn't do its random attacks in this area. It actually only starts to do these attacks once you've reached the Bramble Mead Valley. So again, this can save you a lot of headache later on if you build in the Temple Woods, and if you're one of those who likes to spend a lot of time building out and perfecting your base with a ton of features or items, this is a perfect way to do it safely. Alright, so moving on to our next tip, and that is foundations that you build your structures on. While these are great to have and you can really elevate your building and do all sorts of cool stuff, you will notice that if you are building in some of these other areas, as I stated before, when raids come, your foundations actually are kind of a weak point. And when the foundation is broken, a lot of stuff inside your house actually gets broken as well. But there is one thing you can do to protect this, and that is simply by walking around the foundation and adding walls. This gives you an additional area of protection so that you have additional time to clear out that raid before they destroy your hard work. Now, while we're on the subject of foundations, my next tip is do note that once a foundation gets destroyed, and if an item doesn't get destroyed along with it, as you'll see here, I have a workbench on top, but it's technically on 3 different foundations. Once the foundation is broken, it is kind of annoying because you cannot build another foundation under the item. You will still have to destroy that said item, then put down the foundation, then rebuild the item on top of it. So just be a little bit aware. This is why I recommend building those walls from the previous tip. Now, while we're still in the Temple Woods, I want to say another tip here, and that is you can actually build near the church. This is a great tip as the church teleport can actually be very close and be used almost as your base teleport until you start unlocking a lot of more vault cores later on. So those of you that maybe get 1 vault core or a couple and you want to start exploring a little bit more but don't want to use it for your base, you can actually just build your base right next to the church instead and use that teleport in the meantime. So great helpful tip here. Up next, this next tip is for those of you who like to build stuff and kind of pre-plan but maybe don't have all the materials, and that is to use ghost mode and pre-plan your entire base design. This allows you to figure out where you want everything to sit, and then once designed you can simply just run around with an inventory full of proper materials, filling everything in that was planned. Do be aware though when you do this that if you build in the wrong order, say like a door before the frame for the door, it will break, and then you're going to still have to go back into your plan and then actually remap it to build that again. So it can be a little frustrating, so be sure not to just fill in a roof before you have walls, things like that. Now my last tip for this section is going to be sure to put teleports around when you're building things. You can easily overload yourself with weight but still have the ability to teleport to places as there's no weight restrictions to use the teleport. So this works perfectly for those of you wanting to move your entire base. You can just load yourself up with all sorts of materials, super heavy, and if you already have that pre-planned teleport, you could just simply teleport and just dump it into a chest right there. That way your walk and movement of all that material is just a little bit less. Now let's move on to the next section, which is more foraging tips. First thing I want to talk about is Rock Explosion and Splinter are super useful, but a neat trick that you can do with woodcutting is that you can go around while doing other tasks and just cast Astral Projection when you see a grouping of trees, then leave them on the ground. Don't do anything with them. Once the trees respawn, keep doing this as the drops on the ground don't really seem to go away too much. After you have enough on the ground, you can actually just run around casting Splinter on large groups of trees and just easy farm runs for wood if you need it. Now another tip that kind of piggybacks on this is when you're casting this, or if you're just simply chopping down trees, try to do it from uphill then go downhill, as sometimes if you're lucky enough, the tree trunks will actually roll down the entire hill and just start collecting in giant piles for you. Now for my next tip is for those of you that unlock the sawmill, did you know that you can actually put a lumber storage box right at the end of it and it will automatically put planks into the bin for you? Now the one downside to this is that you will not get the XP for it. So those of you that are hoping to actually get experience from doing this might not be the method for you. Now to obtain the lumber storage box, you do need to get level 40 wood cutting before this is unlocked as a recipe. So just be aware of that, and it is pretty easy to get, especially if you're doing the previous steps. Now moving on to my next tip, and that is for rune essence. Now for those of you that don't know already, those floating rocks can actually be shot down by bow, magic, or even hit with melee to knock them down before using something like rock explosion to loot them all up. I know this is a basic level tip, but I just wanted to throw it in there. Now moving on to vault cores. And they are super useful for teleporters and later on recipes. But did you know you can actually farm these pretty easily if you put teleporters outside of vaults? Now, one indicator I do to really notify me that the vault is ready to go get looted is actually building my base near some sort of chest. Well, Bramblemead Village is a great example of this. This is probably also the area that the wise old man told you to build your base. There's actually a chest right in here in some of the ruins. Now, once you know that this chest can be relooted, simply just teleport to your vault again. You can go in and actually go into the boss chamber and just snag an easy vault core. Now most of the time I would say the enemies are never there. They do spawn randomly in there, but I think the time frame for them to spawn is a large amount of time. Ideally, if you're doing this kind of farming run, you should be able to snag 3 vault cores out of each vault. So that's, if you're sticking to the more easier areas, that's at least 9 cores every couple of in-game days. Now my next tip is for those of you that have gone out and foraged items, things like ore, or you want to build some potions, things like that, load up in your base right as night strikes, like all of this stuff. So whether you're building food, smelting potions, using your kiln, load all of that up, then simply go to sleep, and when you wake up, that will have all been completed already and you don't have to sit around and wait for it. So for my last tip here is that you can actually queue up items to be opened. So those of you that have sacks or nests pending and you don't have that open all option, which is really frustrating. Now what I like to do is actually split the items up, and then you can just queue them up in order and they will open up in that specific order. Now this is a little bit faster than just single-handedly clicking on a single stack. And then do note that you can actually do this with food and water as well. So I like to go back and forth, especially when you're thirsty and hungry at the same time. Now to avoid this video getting any longer, I'm going to cut it here today. Hopefully you guys learned some new stuff. And if you have any other tips that you think would be super useful, put them in a comment down below. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.